Hello there, and this is just a very full little bookshelf. I have hundreds and hundreds of books in my collection, but only a dozen or two out on display here, including magazines. Now, being a literate person myself and having to have had to work actually fairly hard at it, I just wanted to mention that I repeat, do not consider magazines to be the domain of the illiterate just because of a few tabloids. Don't be a literary snob. Just my own point of view. Anyway, forgive the shakiness of the camera. I am using a webcam on an extended USB cord to record this, so you might see some shadows and a lot of different things. First of all, here's a book that is actually just a collection of Beatle memorabilia by a woman named Courtney McWilliams, who's an avid Beatle collector. She has a lot of her point of view to this, and there's a lot of great album covers and whatnot in there, and pictures and trinkets and stuff. It's just something my father got me when I was pretty heavily into the Beatles. Still am, actually. This is an illustrated and practical guide to digital and classic photography. When I first got my digital camera, this was something that I was actually exposed to. It was a gift to me. I think it has a CD-ROM with it. It's awfully old enough to have had a CD-ROM. Speaking of the Beatles, that is the Beatle anthology right there, companion to the famous TV documentary series. And this is a copy of Jazz Is magazine that I got for free. A little bit of a story behind that. Okay, and this is Time magazine, commemorative to Michael Jackson. It's not in the best condition, but you know how it is with magazines. They aren't always quite that way. This is another commemorative Michael Jackson magazine. In this particular case, it was something that was actually made at Walgreens, I believe, or at least sold there. I think it was sold in a lot of places. A couple other magazines here. Mojo, 1996, with Syd Barrett on the cover. Inside, there's this great article on George Clinton. See that there? And my favorite part of it, the 20 reasons for digging P-Funk. I'll try to go down as slow as possible. I don't know if you can read this or pause it, but there's some really interesting little anecdotes about the music here, and little tidbits. I love that cover to the Parliament album Trumpetulation. Worth checking out. Another Mojo magazine with Marvin Gaye on the cover. It's a commemorative issue. Also an article on XTC, one of my favorite pop rock bands from England. And this book is called In the Arms of Morpheus. Now, because I grew up in the 80s, there was a lot of just say no to drugs, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about the history of why, so I decided to check this book out. It talks about morphine and how it went to heroin and opium. Actually, it started out with opium. That's John Keats and Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, and Balzac, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He, of course, did Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner and Kubla Khan, Christabel. Now, he's more known for his opium addiction a lot of times than his writing. Should be known for both. Very interesting character. But this book talks about the history of that, how it became illegal and why, and a lot of interesting personal stories about how the period of drug tolerance for opiates was conducted. Now, when I first got into digital photography as well, my father got me this book. It's called The Art of Rebellion. Since I traveled to a lot more urban areas, it was quite common for me to locate things like this rather than the pretty scenery you'd see in mountainous regions. I live around a lot of that too, but it seems like it's been done. I kind of felt like I was being rather unoriginal when I saw these and compared it to my own photographic work. But, we're all extending a theme. of something we do as artists, so it doesn't make much of a difference. And this is one of the oldest books I have in my collection. It is probably from the late 80s. It is called In the Stream of Stars, the Soviet-American space art book. Shows you how old it is. There's still a Soviet Union. It's a lot of realistic and impressionistic pictures like that one of different things that happened during the space race. Pictures of the space shuttle, rockets landing, coming down. This is my favorite. New Year on Mars. See a little snowman, that's kind of cute. This is Nelson George's book, The Death of Rhythm and Blues. This was written in the late 80s. There's a picture of Nelson George in the back, kind of a byline too. This particular book traces the history of the early end of the music, you know, Louis Jordan and Ray Charles and Muddy Waters and all of that, to the present day of the late 80s at the time, and you know how record companies grew, profits grew, and the music diminished and all of that. Interesting synopsis of the music. And Chaka Khan, a story of her trials and tribulations, relationship problems, personal issues, eccentric personality, one of the best you know, musician singer biographies I've actually had a good luck to read. Now, when I first got into photography, this is probably the first book I got. I think it's intended for kids. It's The Beginner's Guide to Cameras and Photography. A lot of the information is dated roughly around 1979. You know, it's not very up to date, but you know, it did the job to introduce me to some of the basics. Of course, the second book I received was this one. I'm sure many of you are familiar with John Majiko, I think that's the way it's pronounced, or Hijiko, whatever. He wrote this book in, this is the third edition of his famous book on photography, and it really helps you with the mode of illustration. Since I was pretty much entirely self-taught on photography, this particular book helped out a lot, because it's for the self-taught individual. And so is this one. This is a more traditional guide. I've got one just like it for gardening, and this actually helped me out a lot with photography too. Again, some dated information, but some of the basics actually hold up even in the digital era. I keep it for reference. This is the Pentax Classic Camera Guide. The first camera I ever had was a Pentax K1000, and I was looking at another Pentax at the time, 1999, 2000, and digital wasn't quite in yet, so you know, I actually looked into a camera on this that worked pretty well for me for a while. I don't have it anymore. And here's a couple other books. This is an old book that my mother actually read, and considering how much I respect her intelligence and occasional stubbornness, this is something she read in junior high school, and it keeps sticking with her to this day. It's a book from England called On the Run, but it was retitled 3 on the Run. It's kind of a middle school mystery involving a kidnapper, kind of a complex story. I haven't got around to reading it yet, but it's kind of a classic young adult book, and thinking about looking back to it, you know, adolescence is an interesting time in people's lives. A lot of interesting things written in that area. This is a collection of great stories of space travel from Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, and Arthur C. Clarke that I got for free, actually. I gotta admit to that. Here's another selection of books I have up next to my TV, and this is the Webster's New World College Dictionary. Now, I'm well aware that through Wikipedia and spell checkers on a computer, it's not really needed, but always good to have a bound dictionary available to you if you need it. Now, this book is fantastic. It's one of the newest additions to my collection by William Strauss and Neil Howe. Generations, the history of America's future, 1584 to 2069. It actually looks at our sociology of America and how it relates to the generational cycles. So it's a sociology and a history book combined. It's college level, very well written, and actually some amazing information, and even a guide of famous people from each individual generation, from you know, people such as Miles Standish to present day, and actually help you understand your mom, your dad, your boyfriend, girlfriend, grandparents, great-grandparents, ancestors, and, why they do the things they do and why things are better or more of a mess now than they were. I could go on for hours literally explaining how important this book is, but I really recommend that one. The Warner Brothers story, you must remember this, is actually a book that I was recommended to via a documentary documentary film I saw on PBS based on this book. I rented it from the library, and it's great. It shows you how the original Warner Brothers actually used the motion picture format as a vehicle to, express certain social points of view. I found out there were some great films in here, such as Black Legion and The Life of Emile Zola, and another film that I love called Mr. Skeffington. And these films deal with things like anti-Semitism and racism and so forth, and things that were taboo for a lot of other filmmakers to make. And this is Miles, another one of my favorites, the autobiography by Miles Davis with Quincy Trout. There's Miles on the cover. This book describes an interesting character. Everybody seems to have an opinion on this guy, who knows about him well, and he seems to have an opinion on a lot of things too. But, it's a very interesting psychological makeup of a musician and an artist, and how the creative process works in one particular person's mind, and how they view society around them. Very intense and deeply sociological biography. Actually written in a style that everybody can relate to, but very pointed. Great book. This is Michael Jackson, visual documentary by Adrian Grant. Now, this particular book came out around 1994 when Mike was facing a lot of troubles and the charges, and you all know about that. And Adrian Grant wanted to do a respectful, non-tabloid trash literature illustrated recitation on his career, starting from when he was a baby up to the then present day. It ends with his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley, actually, and does a great job of tracing the high and the low points, career-wise especially, of Michael Jackson. Now, all you Wizard of Oz fans, this is the 50th anniversary book with an introduction by Jack Haley Jr. about the production of the famous 1939 film. Shows you the high and lows, the script changes, cast changes of the film. A great picture guide, a lot of great humor and stories. This is another Wizard of Oz. This is the original retelling of L. Frank Baum's book. It has some great illustration on the front and inside, illustrated by a guy named Greg Hildebrandt, who actually based characters in this book here on people in his family and who were involved in the writing of this book. Now, this is forwarded by a man named Hamilton Meserve, and he is the son of Margaret Hamilton, who portrayed the Wicked Witch of the West in the first Wizard of Oz theatrical live-action film in 1939. There was a silent film before that, but it wasn't really totally based on the Wizard of Oz with Laurel and Hardy. But anyway, you all know that one. And Hamilton Meserve, I reluctantly, since I'm not a really group type of person, went to a men's group with a friend of mine where I met Hamilton Meserve, and he discussed how his mom had a home here in Maine, and I should have had him sign that book, actually. That would have been interesting. Now, this is a book called Barefoot Gen, a cartoon story of Hiroshima by Keiji Nakazawa. It's based loosely on his own experiences from April to August 1945. World War II buffs and historians, especially those involved with nuclear history, should know about this. That's the character of Gen, based on Keiji himself and his younger brother, Seiji. Now, this chronicles the months before Hiroshima was the target of the world's first atomic bomb, which, as you know, was toward the end of World War II. There's been a lot of debate about it since, but this is a very good manga, the Japanese comic recitation. See the pictures there, it's all written in black and white ink format. It's a translation of the original Hadashi no Gen, I believe it's called. And it's actually a very good personal story about regular people facing impossible odds, especially toward the end of the book. I won't spoil it for you, but Gen here lives and she does not. There's a lot more to it than that. It's an incredible book, and it actually does a lot to point out Japan's mistreatment of its own people during the Second World War. So it is not biased in any way. Lately, I've also gotten into collecting another magazine. Actually, I should have mentioned this a little earlier, actually, called Wax Poetic. It's a wonderful magazine set up by DJs about jazz and funk music and all that I love. And I have some of it. Here's one, Wax Poetic, with Earth, Wind, and Fire on the cover. The Ohio Players are on that one. Barry White on that. Juan Atkins, Detroit Techno. George Benson. And Nina Simone. And the latest issue, the Latin issue. And I intend to collect more of those. Now to conclude this vlog, I just wanted to say one thing. Good literature, whether it be a magazine or a novel or anything, lasts forever. But the books they're written into don't. Now, LeVar Burton once said that. This is an R&B music guide, actually, called Music Hound's Guide to R&B Music. I read this a lot. Unfortunately, I am guilty, as a lot of people, of not always taking care of my books, trying to put too many into a shelf, or, handling them a little too tough, or, going to sleep at night and throwing them on the floor instead of putting them away. I know I shouldn't. I am not lazy. I just sometimes get really tired and worn out for different reasons. And as you can see, this book is in such repair, missing so many pages. It really needs to be replaced. Luckily, I found out on Amazon.com you can do that. And, a little lesson to all of you, especially those of you who know full well better, like I did, treat your books well. It's an important thing. Anyway, so that's what I have. I need to put some of these books away now that I've demonstrated them for you. And that's how books and literature have influenced my life. Thank you.